that you're on your best etiquette behavior promise. We have people muted throughout the event, and you can mute your video too if you are a little virtually camera shy. That's fine too. But Catherine specifically wanted to see your lovely faces, and so we hope that you're as happy as I know we are, and she is, that you're here this evening and joining us for her latest book. So let me just tell you a little bit about Catherine, if you don't mind. Catherine Newman is the author of Waiting for Birdie, Catastrophic Happiness, and One Mixed Up Night, and she's the co-author of Stitch Camp. She's also the etiquette columnist for Real Simple magazine and the editor of the James Beard Award-winning kids cooking magazine, Chop Chop. She's contributed to publications including the New York Times, O, the Oprah Magazine, and Parents. She lives in Amherst, Massachusetts with her family, and a little later we'll post a link to her professional website. So it's my pleasure to introduce Catherine Newman, whose latest book is How to Be a Person 65, hugely useful, super important, skills to learn before you're grown up.
Thank you so much, Patricia and Stephanie. Thanks for having me. I'm so happy to be here. And the faces I can see, I can't even tell you, I could just cry. My father-in-law is here. My friend Allison, who is even more beautiful in person than I knew. And Natalie, who's a really old friend of mine, is here. And the other people, and I'm just happy to be here. Okay, how to be a person. I had to post it all up so I could find the pages I wanted to talk about. But so happy to be hosted by an independent bookstore. And I was telling these guys, but when I put this on Facebook, a bunch of people were like, Malaprop's my favorite bookstore, which was so nice. We love that. So I don't know if you have this book. It's not a reading book. It's more of a how-to book for kids, an illustrated how-to book. But I was just going to read the introduction, which I have not done at an event like this, but I have to keep thinking of ways to not bore my father-in-law who comes to all my events. So this was what I came up with for this one. So Larry, I'm going to read the introduction because you haven't heard it, actually. The introduction's called Becoming Your Best Self. And I should mention, although most of you know this story, but I wrote this book because Birdie, my daughter, who's about to turn 18, which is unbelievable to me, she's a person who doesn't like being explained to. And in fact, she dislikes it so much that she has a thing she describes as my explaining voice, which is a really annoying voice to her. And she's been like that since she was 2. She had to do everything herself. She tied her shoe, younger kid, right? Classic. And when she was a teenager, a young teenager at some point, and I asked her to do something, like a basic household thing. And I think it was either sweep the floor or clean the bathroom. Her grandparents were coming and I was trying to impress them with our clean house, which is a lie. And I asked her to do this thing and she said, oh, I'm happy to. I don't know how to do that, but don't explain it to me. And I was like, yeah, okay, well, I don't know how you're gonna learn how to do anything. But I did know, because the truth is she's always been like this. And that what you do is you go get a book for her. Go get a book. So I went to the library, and I know Allison's heard this story because I told it to her on the phone. I went to the library and I said, hey, can I have, let me check out a book. Like, do you have like a big encyclopedia, like a photographic encyclopedia of teaching chores to kids? Like, can I check that out? Like, I'm picturing, like where every page it's like 50 photographs, like one of those DK books, and it's like, sweeping into a dustpan, and then there's like a million photographs of it. And that book does not exist. I found out from my wonderful children's librarian, and there was nothing like it at all for kids, really. That was like, how do you actually do this stuff? Not should you do this stuff or nice kids help, or not a moralizing book, but just a like, how do you do it? So I pitched the photographic encyclopedia. I pictured a 1,000-page book, like maybe in 2 volumes. And I pitched it to my publisher, and they were like, that's a terrible idea. That's really boring. Nobody's going to want that book but you, which was totally true. Patricia wants that book. And so we landed at a really good compromise, which is a much better book, which is an illustrated, more fun than photos, an illustrated guide to a ton of stuff. So it's a lot more than just the nitty gritty, like cleaning chores, which was the book I pictured. So there's relationship stuff and interpersonal stuff. And I'll show, I have a slide. Should I show this? Let me see if I can figure
Whatever
this
you want to.
If I share my screen, what if I never get back here? Well, I'll miss you all.
We're going to do our best.
Okay, let's see. I'm going to share my screen. Do you see my screen?
I don't see it yet.
What about now? I don't think I'm going to worry about this because I don't know how to do it. Okay, this is why you should never let me share my screen. Okay. What I was going to show you, which I could show you anyway, is the truth. But I was going to show you the table of contents. And the table of contents is the chapters are other beings, saying it right, dirty things, edible food, you're wearing that, your 2 cents, and what's the last one? Something, other skills, useful skills. And so that was, the chores idea kind of expanded into this book that has many more skills in it. And it's illustrated by this incredible illustrator, Debbie Fong, and she nails everything for me. So this is how to have a conversation. And the topic I had picked was, asking like a would you rather question, like, would you rather be a rain cloud or a hedgehog, where you could have a deep conversation about the universe. And she just illustrated everything in this perfect way. And rumor has it that kids actually will pick this book up and just flip through it, which was like my dream for this book, is that somebody wouldn't have to make you sit down and read it, that you would just like pick it up and leaf through it if you were the kind of dorky kid that I was. And I read a lot of books like this when I was a kid. All right, let me read the introduction. It's becoming your best self. We swear, I can't see with or without my glasses. We swear we're not trying to turn you into a premature adult. We don't want you trudging around in a small suit with a briefcase or wedging yourself under the sink to fix the plumbing in your bathroom. But we do think you'll be a happier person if you learn the skills in this book, some of which you probably already know, others of which people probably think you already know, and all of which will come in handy pretty much immediately. The truth is that it feels good to do meaningful things, and it feels good to be appreciated. And these skills pretty much guarantee a combination of those 2 good feelings. Look, we understand that maybe you didn't pick this book out all on your own. Maybe your grown-ups even passive aggressively gave it to you for your birthday, along with a pair of rubber gloves and a plunger. You're welcome. But it doesn't really matter, because we're convinced that a lot of the tasks we tend to think of as chores can be truly rewarding, especially if you have a chance to step toward them with confidence rather than being backed into them by that bulldozer of nagging, otherwise known as your mom or dad. Or maybe by the time you're reading this, there's a robot that can do all of the household chores. Perfect. Put this book aside to show your children one day. Before we had robots, we had to water the plants and wipe the kitchen counters ourselves, you'll say, and the kids will shake their heads and pity you. One thing we know, asking what can I do to help is a sure way to be your best self. And with this book in hand, you won't have to say awkwardly, I don't actually know how to do that. And there's a note about kids with different abilities, and my hope that kids will be able to adapt to this book for their own use and that they'll let me know how. Um, and when I was reading that just now, I was thinking about, you know, quarantine and all this time kids have been at home and how screened out they are, a lot of them. A lot of them are on Zoom a lot. We're on Zoom a lot. There's just a lot of intangible, unsocial life. And I talked to this neuroscientist. I talk to her all the time because she's always doing really cool stuff. But her name's Kelly Lambert, and she has this theory about how we've evolved to reward ourselves with dopamine when we do useful things with our hands in particular. So making food or gardening or chopping wood or building something, making something, those activities actually release dopamine, which is what makes you feel good and like things are good. And her theory is that basically the more kids are actually authentically useful, kind of the happier they'll feel. And so that is something I've been thinking a lot about, just helping kids feel authentically useful and what that looks like. Right? Natalie gave me a thumbs up. I love this. I love being able to see people. So those are some things I was thinking about. I don't know if there's questions or if you want to have a different kind of conversation or if you want me to read other parts, or I'm really open.
Okay. I'd love to talk to you a little bit more. And as we talk, I think more people will be, posting on the chat, and that'll generate a lot of questions and engagement. If that's okay with you,
That's perfect. I love that.
Yeah. I think the book title is really interesting because ideas about what makes a good person may vary. So when you were thinking of a good person, if you were, who embodies, can you think of some folks, or is that putting you on the spot too much? Who are some good people, some people, and sorry, somebody's getting ready to drive right by my window there, so we won't count that person as a good person right at that moment. Who are some examples, some exemplars, Catherine, of a good person?
Well, I mean, for me, I'm going to sidestep that question a teeny bit, but although there are, I mean, for me, a good person, I know it's funny that just came up. Like a friend of mine who, like me, as Jewish, just said, like, you don't mean how to be a person, you mean like how to be a mensch, which is the Yiddish expression for like a good person. And in fact, there's going to be like a Jewy edition of this book coming out called How to Be a Mensch, but that's a separate issue. For me, that question, what can I do to help? And I think of that question at every level, from like the microist to the macroist. For me, that's the hallmark quality. And what can I do to help? And you're in your house and you have a sad sibling or parent or child, for that matter. I mean, this is everybody, not just kids. Or oh my God, can you chop the parsley for me? We have people coming. Can you clean the bathroom? Grandma and grandpa are coming. Asking that question at that level, what can I do to help? Like, how can I be helpful to you? Asking it at the level of your neighborhood, right? Who needs what? We saw that, I think, a lot in the pandemic. We certainly did, like in my neighborhood, right? Who needs help? Who are the more vulnerable people on our street? Who in our town needs help? Then at this like much bigger level of like being a political activist. So there's a page in here about, contacting your political representatives, right? So how do I take myself to be a meaningful member of the world I live in? How do I affect political change? How do I stand up against racism at my school or in the country or at my Thanksgiving table? All of these things for me stem from the question, what can I do to help? So I guess that is a long answer to a simpler question.
Maybe it's that people, when they think of a good person, and I definitely think our synagogue, the synagogue that my partner and I attend in Asheville, there's small ways and there's larger ways, there's global ways, there's all these avenues to help and kind of figure out how can you be a member of a community or communities where you identify need and are present to address that need as best you can. It's very humbling. And I think that a book that says helping takes many forms, and figuring out how you can help is going to make you a better person or a good person is an important message because it's very broad.
Right.
For sure.
And yes, totally. I mean, humbling is a word I've been thinking about a lot lately, that way of saying, like, I don't know everything, or it's not just me. And I do feel like with this book, for me, when it came out, mostly people wanted to talk to me about independence, which makes total sense because the book has that vibe, and it definitely is that. Like, how can you learn these skills? How can you be this more independent person? People are giving it to their kids who are on their way to college, which I think is hilarious, but I love it. But also I think about it being a book about interdependence more than independence. So
Mhm.
I think of it as a book that's like, oh, how do we be in this world together? Because what I always say is, if you live alone, I don't care at all if you clean your bathroom or don't clean your bathroom. That's totally your thing. As soon as you're with other people, that's a different issue. Then there's responsibility to community. So I guess for me, this book is much more about living in community than about somehow being some person who can go off like on your own.
One of the things that I was also thinking about was gender roles, because sometimes, and particularly in the Southern family in which I grew up, uh, women were helping in the kitchen and the men were off doing some relaxing. And so I think that ideas about help and being a good person, those have sometimes had gendered um, connotations. So, how did you address that in your book, and what do you think about that issue of gender roles?
Yeah. I think about that a lot. And it's funny, this cover, I mean, not to just be like revealing the dirty secrets, but what you'll see is that there's a white boy on the cover. And boy, did we go around and around with this cover, because there was an interest in making it be a girl, right? Because we want to see more representation of girls in books. People thought it maybe should be a person of color, or a black kid, or some different race kids, and I really wanted it to be a white boy. I've never actually said this out loud before, except in private to my family, but I wanted it not to speak to the people only who are already being trained to be helpful, either by the expectations of the culture or by sexist assumptions or even racist assumptions. And so so that's one thing. I really wanted it not to feel gendered when you picked it up. I didn't want it to be like there were boy things and girl things. Obviously, that I almost goes without saying, but Also just wanted it to have some surprises. Like I wanted the necktie tying to be a girl. I wanted gender to be more or less out the window, not have any page be gendered really in any way. I didn't want only friendships between same gender kids. Like, but especially like you said, the expectation. And I grew up also, um, not in the South, but with various extended families who summoned, the girls and women into the kitchen before and after meals, while the men, lounged around watching football. And we don't want to raise our kids that way. I mean, I'm sure we don't like that. That seems like a really sexist vestige of something kind of ugly.
I think that's one of the elements of your book is kind of highlighting that there are different ways to envision what is help, envision what is cooperation, and who's cooperating
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
how,
Yeah.
and that tasks can be undertaken uh, regardless of gender identity or race. That serving and helping have historically been gendered and racialized, and there are class distinctions about help as well that I think are also embedded in those ideas. And so it seems like your book is really like the subtext is very challenging to those very traditional and entrenched ideas.
I'm glad.
And so along those lines, when you're considering your audience, you said your audience, you had a particular audience, but people are going to, like I said, I was like, I know I'm going to learn something because I can always be on the lookout for how to be a better person. And that seems to me like a broad message too, especially if you were raised differently from what you're presenting in the book. So there's a way that any reader, any parent, any person who's got a child who's reading this book could say, oh, reconsidering our assumptions. Did you have that in mind too, that maybe some of this would get out there a little broader than just your target audience, or were we all your target audience really? Go ahead and confess.
Ah, that's a good question. I mean, I think both really. Like there was a target audience and it was that kind of middle grade reader, like the 10 to 12, the kids who are still young enough to like, if you left it out, they might just pick it up, and not be like, well, who gave me this? I don't want it, whatever. So I love and I love that age reader too, but I love that younger kids are picking it up. I think that's awesome. And I love that people are sending their kids to college with it, because the truth is my son did not know how to clean a bathroom apparently until this book was in galleys, because when I asked him to clean the bathroom and I went in, the galley of the book was propped open like with a big tube of toothpaste, and I was like, you are effing kidding me, like my 20-year-old kid. So whatever it was I thought I had or hadn't taught him, I hadn't taught him. And so I think it's useful. And I like to always say that a book keeps your secrets, if you don't know something and you look it up, like that's fine. The book doesn't judge you. It doesn't think you should already know. The book isn't like, I already showed you how to do that. It's just like, it's there. You can look again, it's fine. It's no big deal.
My favorite part of that is that the toothpaste was propping it open. There's something like, I hope you got a picture of that. And if you didn't, okay, I'll be all right. But there's just like, okay, I'm going to do this, get the toothpaste, prop it open. I'm figuring it out.
Yeah,
There's something I really appreciate about the toothpaste in there. It seems appropriate. It seems appropriate in every way. So when you were preparing this book, you've got 65, right, suggestions here. How did you come up with 65? I mean, were there 100 and you cut it down? Were there 10 and you said, oh, this is not going to get it. A good person's not going to make it in 10. Okay, that's not enough to get a good person out of this. We got to get past 50 at least. How did you get to that number?
That's a good question. We got to that number the way anybody who writes anything gets to any number, which is usually backwards, where you're like 13 frosty eyeshadow colors. I've written so much magazine copy in my life, and it's like, how many do we have? Okay, that's the number. So we counted up the skills, and there were 65, and that was the number we put on the book. That said, there were things we, couldn't decide about. There were like there was maybe going to be more of a yard, like a yard work chapter, and like raking and shoveling and mowing and stuff. And then I just really didn't want there to be a whole chapter of the book that didn't speak to urban kids, just because I feel like that then feels like a sort of missed opportunity somehow. Or there were, on the other side, we had a thing about taking public transportation, which I think my kids like still have never done uneventfully. I mean, I have actual adult children who are like, wait, do I say hello to the driver? And, like no concept of how to get on a bus or call a doctor's office. These are skill, but the calling is in the book. The getting on the bus we left out. So it was somewhat, we didn't put in like dating, but I'm working on a kind of a follow-up to this book that might have, it's more of the talking part for the same age group, like what do you say in different situations, and there's going to be a little thing in there about romance, but kicked wide open. I mean, every possible thing, but also very gentle and not too explicit. I don't know, we're still working it out. But that was something that like some kids wished there was a thing about, like, how do you know if your crush likes you or stuff like that. That's not in this book. How do you make small talk with your grandparents? Allison, was that your kid who wanted that? Somebody wanted that. Larry, you're easy to make small talk with, so it wasn't about you. Yeah, just different things sort of have come in, and we were like, oh, we didn't think of that. But so it was just that.
So you mentioned that you're working on maybe like a sequel. Is that?
I mean, it's different kind of. I'm hoping Debbie's going to illustrate it because she's just the best in every way. And we want it to have the same flavor, but it's still very much in the process of being written. But it's much more like sort of dealing with, I almost want to say etiquette, but I don't mean that in the like, which fork do you use sense, which I could never possibly ever care less about. But more in the sense of like, you're sitting next to someone on the bus you don't know, like, just all the different things that come up where what is expected is that you will communicate something in a million different ways, and it's really just a book about communicating.
There, along that line, that there was a comment and question from Elizabeth. She's got children that are aged 13 and 15, and she's thinking about maybe a book that perhaps you might write that would include things about being safe at college, being good to your peers, or particular emergency situations. And I can say, as a former teacher, a public school teacher at one point, and then later university professor, there's such learning that goes on just interpersonally for young people. And of course, with the introduction, I remember the time before cell phones, which is hard to believe, but now social media it really shapes young people's lives, and being a good person virtually it seems like something that would you probably considered it. What are your thoughts? Discuss.
Being a good person virtually, is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I know, isn't it funny? I just heard virtue in that word like for the first time ever. What is that? Okay.
An idea is born.
I know. Yes, and that is ideally going to be in this communication book, you know, how to but it's like I'm not quite interested enough in technology to write an entire book just about that, which is just a confession. Like I'm still I am kicking and screaming into it, as evidenced by my inability to like share my screen after like someone else made me a PowerPoint. I mean, really so terrible. Um, um, but yes, those are good questions, and we get a lot of questions in the etiquette column at Real Simple about kind of um, digital etiquette of various kinds, and those are easier than the ones you were just reading from the chat, because the ones in the chat are more about safety, which is its own whole thing. So um, but anyway, I wrote it down.
That's important.
with the, with my,
Write it down. I know I've got my sticky notes over here talking about them. You think I'm joking? No, I'm not. That's all my thoughts.
it's
Right
this.
here. I'm writing them down. So the thing is real, everybody. I love the idea of how to put virtue in the virtual. I mean, I think
Right? I'm sure someone's written that already. I just hadn't.
I doubt it, Catherine. I doubt anybody has written that yet. Copyright Patricia. No, I'm just kidding. So one of the other questions we had here was, do you have a favorite entry? And along those lines, what do you think is the most clever entry in the book?
I have a favorite entry, and it's let me find it. It's how to apologize. I don't know if you can see it. Well, it's okay. It's a kid apologizing to his mom because he broke her glass manatee while they were playing hockey in the house. And he's really, really sorry. And he's extra sorry because she'd asked him not to play hockey in the house. And he apologizes really well. And she says, that's okay. Not only that, she says, that's okay. It always kind of gave me the creeps anyway. And then Debbie Fong, because she is the love of my life, drew a little broken manatee for me, which I really appreciated. How to apologize. I mean, I think we've seen, and I'm not even kidding, like on a national political level, the danger of not being able to take responsibility for your actions. It is actually terrifying, and it feels like world ending to me, that you would not be able to simply say, oh my God, I was wrong, I'm sorry, or oh, I did this thing that hurt you, I'm so sorry. Not taking responsibility is, I think, a really dangerous trend. And so to me, that's just a skill you learn. Like, I want it to feel almost amoral that you don't know that maybe already when you pick up the book. Like, it's just a skill. Maybe no one ever taught you how to apologize. That's fine. You can just learn it. It's not a mystery. It's not, doesn't come from like the depths of your goodness. It's just an actual life skill. So that one is special to me. Also, I live with two people who I love really, really a lot, but the men in my house are terrible apologizers. And they both, when they were reading a proof of this book for me, were like, I don't understand this page. I mean, they were just kidding, but they both put it like a funny post-it on it that was like WTF, or what is this, taking responsibility? And maybe they learned a lot from it. No,
I definitely think when we look at the history of politics, taking responsibility, Eisenhower said, what U-2 plane that got shot down that didn't exist? And there's like, whoop, Gary Powers pops up, and it's like, oh, sorry. Let's lie to the American public. So there's so many examples in public life where we see people either fall short or in the rare occasion say, yeah, I didn't do the right thing. And so I think that making that a key part of your book is, it seems to me, really valuable because again, that we mentioned that word humble, humility earlier, and it can be sometimes very painful to say, oh, I I did something wrong, I'm sorry I hurt
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
And modeling that in our own lives is sometimes a really great antidote for those that don't,
Yep.
and I find that very empowering, that it's like, okay, but that can be something that we do, and that's not the example we want to follow over there.
Yep.
Another question, and I think it's kind of connected to difficult skills. Allison said, "What do you find is the hardest skill for kids to learn, particularly of the skills you wrote about in the book?"
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I really feel like it must be so household specific. And maybe like I feel like everything I introduced too late is the hardest skill to learn. And I'm not really sure. And I'm coming back to cleaning the bathroom, which was the whole raison d'etre of this book. But cleaning the bathroom has everything going against it. It's gross. It feels contaminating and weird. It's not especially rewarding unless you have a really newish, very clean bathroom. I have the kind of bathroom you clean it and it looks kind of the same as it looked before because a lot of the stuff doesn't really come off. You know what I mean? Like it's, I don't know. I
You
think
know,
that
you say differently now, Catherine. I have to say, it's just turned
yeah,
into kind of true confessions. It's just a turn.
sorry. TMI about my bathroom. No, it's like you scrub it and it looks better, but it doesn't look like a hotel bathroom. Like it's just looks okay. Um and because it's usually fairly clean, and I mean that in the loosest sense, like it's just not frankly disgusting all the time. I think it's been mystified for the kids. I don't think we've drawn attention to our cleaning of it ever. I think for a lot of families, the pandemic kind of drew the veil back and people were home all together and you really got to see how a household got run. And that I think is really an amazing thing. Um, yeah, cleaning the bathroom for my particular kids, Allison, is the thing that nobody seems ever inclined to do. Everyone is so baffled by it that it should just be easier for me to do it myself, except I won't. Uh, yeah, yeah, that one. Is that what you were asking, or were you asking something more philosophical?
I think you did both.
It was that. Yeah.
I think you did both there. Is there a skill that you wish had made it? Did there need to really be 66? Was there a skill that you said, I wish we hadn't cut that one?
No, because now I get to write this other book. I mean, mostly the skills I keep being like, oh, we should have put that in are the interpersonal skills, which like that's something I just love thinking about. And I've talked to my kids. I used to write a parenting like a parenting question column, and my kids would just write it with me. So people would write in and be like, my kid is going to have sex and I don't think they're ready, which I do. And I would just sit down with my kids and we would talk through whatever it was. And they had such great advice. And I love thinking about that stuff, how we communicate with each other and, why, sort of just what the power is of connection and of language. So those things I keep thinking like, oh, we should have done that, but now they're all going somewhere, you know. How to make a bong out of an apple. That's what people were teasing me about not putting in, because that's a really important skill, just
Carving.
yeah,
Carving
carving.
is
Yes,
with fruit.
yes, Carving with fruit, we could have called that chapter.
and eat.
Yes.
Right. I'm reminded of the linguist Deborah Tannen, and I'm sure you know who I'm
Yes.
talking about. And her research on boys and girls at different ages and how they communicate and face each other or don't, and how they play, and things like asking directions or not asking directions. Making suggestions that sound actually like orders. I think you're really onto something here with interpersonal communication. So I'm really excited to see how this, something that was basically, how do you do these things? Here's some applied skills. And then it grew into this, how to be a good person. And it sounds like, you've got the field is wide open, and looking at communication. And there are a lot of ways today which it seems like communication sometimes is just at a roadblock. How do we communicate about particular issues? How do we communicate and deal with sensitive subjects? And I think that's one of there's a post now in the chat where there's praise for you for being really good at talking to your own kids about difficult and realistic situations, using frank language and humor. And this, Elizabeth said she was thinking about when she was in college, and she had experiences like not knowing anyone, or horror, finding someone who had attempted suicide, who was a hallmate. And if you were to write that book, for older people, she thinks it would be great. And I can definitely see why that would be one of those, almost like a don't sweat the small stuff. But this is how to be a good person in life, and thoughts on that. So when you think about your time as say just a few years ago in your 20s, when you were when you were wondering, how do I do this? What do you think? What do you wish you'd known?
I mean, I really so went to college during the incredible, like, sexual assaulty 80s. I mean, not like it's changed so dramatically, but I could really have used some life skills around boundaries. I mean, I just had none. I hadn't been trained to have any boundaries at all. Um, I was so, I just wanted to be liked. I wanted to say yes. And those are also great skills. Like, I could have used some discernment, I think. Like, it doesn't have to be baby out with the bathwater. Although it was for a while. Larry knew me during that time when I shaved my head and didn't laugh for like 3 years. That was, one reaction. But I could really just have used boundaries. And I feel like that's now part of the lexicon. I mean, I don't think we now raise girls to not have boundaries. I feel like it's part of what they learn sort of in a lot of different aspects of their lives. And that's what I really could have used, honestly. Yeah. I mean, my daughter wants to go to an all women's college, and that's partly because she's this like butch gay kid, and she's like, what would I miss? And I'm like, nothing. But also, for me, like, just picturing that as a college experience, I'm like, oh my God, that sounds like heaven.
I went to a private women's college, and I went to Meredith College in Raleigh. And
Yeah.
my father thought that it was going to turn me into a proper lady.
Oh.
And that didn't work out. But definitely, since NC State was just down the road, it really wasn't quite what my father kind of had in his mind that it was going to be. But I think that and I went to school in the 80s as well. And I think that this issue of boundaries and desperately, trying to figure out how to connect with other people.
Yes.
Oh,
Those
so
those
awkward.
two things, right? Boundaries and
Yeah,
connection.
they
Yeah.
feel like they're not
Yeah.
connected, but they're
Yes.
like two sides of a coin.
Yes. Totally. Yeah.
They are really two sides of a coin, and some of that comes with maturity and trial and error. And but then there just things, if we didn't have those experiences or models or moments when we were younger, it would be so nice to have had just a little more skill in that and how to and I was thinking about this too. Your title raises something for me as well, which is how to identify a good person.
Uh-huh.
Because being how to be a good person, but also having that sense of, oh, this is it, I'm in the company of a good person. And I think
Yeah. And that's a really it's funny. I remember I think it's really helpful actually when kids are little and they have really good friendships that you can see as a parent are really healthy mutual friendships. When
Mhm.
our kids had those friendships, I remember saying like, "Hey, make a mental note about what this feels like." You
Right.
know, like blueprint on this, on like mutuality, you know? Like you really want that for your kids. I mean, you want that for everybody, obviously.
Right. I can see that. I just found my um, elementary school pen pal that I had
Oh my
for
God.
about 15 years, and I found her on Facebook. And I'm thinking about those times when writing letters, and, putting your
Oh
thoughts
yeah.
down in letters was a really good way to help kind of absorb what was happening. And I miss that letter writing, and I
Yeah.
wish more people would write letters to people they love and to people they admire,
Yes.
people they care about, or the friends, because there's something about that that's just really not a text, and it's not a Facebook message or anything. It's just being a little more thoughtful,
Collective. Yeah, totally.
and I think that may be a lost skill, or a receding skill, maybe, that I would love to see back. Bring it back. Bring it
Yeah.
back. It's kind of your technology sort of, it's not all great. It's not all great. But something else that I was thinking about with your book that you mentioned was you had people reading your book. And this is more of a process question.
Yeah.
When you had people reading the galleys, or how do you choose the people that you want to read?
Yeah.
Stephen
Yeah.
King talks about this, is that he has the person who his is actually his wife, that is his audience, his one he's writing for her. And then he's got this other group of people he gives the book to, and they read it and they give him the unvarnished but loving truth. So, so how do you handle that?
Yeah. Um, I write in a really solitary way is the truth, but then I do like, to get a lot of feedback once it's done. And I did write this book for Birdie, my daughter. I mean, I really wrote it with her in mind a lot. She's I mean, besides that she's like stubborn and you can't help her with anything, she's also just an incredible kind of empath, and she's also much more politically aware than I am about language. So when I gave her the book to read, I knew that it was going to be covered in post-its when I got it back, and it was covered in post-its. I gave it to her in proofs. And she's so loving and amazing, and it's all so like, I love this, I'm just wondering, like she's so careful to not like hurt my feelings, but oh my god, just everything, nailed everything that was like a weird mom joke. She was like, I wonder if this is going to be as funny to young people as you think it is, you know. Anyway, really great. So she and a bunch of people read it for me at that stage, but she's like the person where 99 out of 100 times I'm going to do the thing she thinks I should do. You know, other people, it's like some of their advice is helpful, some of it's not, like, which is totally helpful anyway.
Mhm.
But she's like just on it. So it's kind of like that.
And so, what is your writing process like? What do you have to do to write?
Um,
How do you make the magic happen?
yeah, right. It's like I'm laughing because it's very caffeine. Allison, are you like a caffeine writer? I'm like all caffeine and it's the morning and it has to be then. I can do a lot of stuff in the afternoon, but not the actual like production of pages. That has to happen on a big caffeine jag, and it'll fizzle out, and then I'll not really be able to do it again. Like I can write odds and ends, but if I really need to write, I need to get super caffeinated and sit down and write. That's the process, and that's it. That's the whole thing. And deadlines. I mean, Allison and I keep referring to you because I can see your face, but Allison and I both write really for a living, like the people assign us stuff and we write it and we get paid. And that is the best thing that could happen to my writing practice, is needing to write. Like I love the idea of being like a kept woman, and I could just write whatever I wanted. And that would be like nothing. I would probably actually never write again if I didn't need to like make money at it, because now I'm in the habit of like writing on deadline. So the fact that people who don't have to write are writing anyway is totally amazing and impressive to me.
So the discipline you developed a little bit, this kind of, when you can write, what you can
Yeah.
get done at a particular time of day, and what kind of a stimulant you need in order to make it happen.
Yes.
But so then what, you have some plans? You've mentioned what you're working on now. Anything else in the works? Anything else you
Oh,
want
I
to
don't
tell
know, odds and ends. I keep wanting to write this novel. I volunteer in a hospice, and also my best friend died in hospice a few years ago. And
Mhm.
hospice there is so much good copy, as we like to say. As my friend accused me as she was dying, she was like, "You're writing all this down, aren't you? You're the worst." I was like, "I know, I'm the worst in hospice, like making notes about all the like ridiculous things that happened." But so I have a novel I want to write that takes place in a hospice, but it's very hard with I don't know if other writers, first of all, I don't know how to write fiction very well, and second of all, COVID is so confusing. Like I don't want it to be in the book or not be in the book, it's neither. I just feel like everything's going to be pandemic, but then it feels weird for it. So I'm just waiting for this to like move past us a little bit. And then I'm writing my hospice. It's going to be like a trampy hospice novel where the main character is like sleeping around in the hospice.
as they should be.
Is how I feel.
Is hospice. You better get it on while you can get it on.
No, the main character's not dying. She's the friend of the friend.
That's my hospice novel.
Yes. One should be trampy in hospice in that way too, but this is the trampy friend in the hospice.
Okay. That's what happens when it's fiction. It's like your own Rorschach test, and you're like,
That's right. I know. Nobody steal that idea. I'll know it was mine.
Copyright Patricia.
The trampy hospice novel.
It's mine. It's mine. It's mine. So we're coming to the top of the hour, and I just wanted to draw everyone's attention to the chat, because Stephanie has not only posted the Catherine's book there, and then where you can purchase from Malaprops or your independent bookstore if you don't live in our area, but we do mail as well. But also two books that Catherine had recommended, and one is called The Power of Showing Up by Daniel Siegel and Tina Payne Bryson. And then another book, How to Raise an Adult by Julie Lythcott Hames. So she did.
If
Oh, got another one.
Nick's still here, because another book is The Parent Compass, which is this awesome new book. I don't know if Cynthia's still here, but it's very it's a book about like following your instincts as a parent. That's the compass piece of it, and it's really amazing. So I'm recommending that.
Parent,
Well,
The Parent Compass.
yes.
Okay. Well, I have had a lot of fun,
Me too.
and I knew I would learn things, and I did. And Catherine, I want to thank you so much for your great good humor and your commitment to helping us all be better people and find a way to communicate and apologize when we need to, and clean the bathroom, for goodness sake, even if it's really not going to look that much better, but at least you did it, because somebody's glad. Somebody somewhere will be glad. And I know you've made your family so proud, and particularly your, look, applause there from the father-in-law and from all of us here. Huzzah, huzzah, huzzah. I am really looking forward to How to Be a Mensch as well, because that's something I want to know more about too. And I'll leave you any parting comments or shout outs, anything you'd like to say to the audience who really supports you and your book and independent bookstores. What would you like to say to round us out?
Me?
Yes,
Oh my God.
you're the star. You're the star.
I
Yes.
just love these people. People are coming on now, and I'm seeing who they actually are, and I'm like dying, like my publisher is here. I might have spoken more carefully about every single thing, but and my sister-in-law, and I just love you people, and it's so nice to be here, and I'm just thank God for independent bookstores. Thank you so much for hosting me and for existing.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you all for being here. Catherine, congratulations on your book. And we hope that we get to see you in person sometime. But until then, we look forward to learning more. After the 65, there's got to be 66 and more. And we're growing up here. We need more guidance. So we're waiting.
Thank you
Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. Thank you, Stephanie. Thanks,
Good night, everyone. Thank you for joining us.